She has been reliving and rewriting McCain campaign history over the past 24 hours. We've seen how well that's gone. Called with a variety of words on the record a liar. Now she attempts to revamp her foreign policy credentials. In our third story in the countdown, Sarah Palin goes rogue with the facts. Now we'll have the Palin analysis. But first, after lying to Barbara Walters saying she never linked her foreign policy credentials to Alaska's proximity to Russia, Palin takes another crack at policy making, this time in an interview with Orly Tate's Limbaugh, paging Dick Cheney.
I think domestically, a threat that we're facing right now is the dithering and hesitation in sending a message to the terrorists that we're going to claim what Ronald Reagan claimed. Our motto is going to be, we win, you lose. The way that we do that is allow McChrystal to have the reinforcements that he's asking for in Afghanistan. That sends that message to the terrorists over there that, no, we're going to end this thing with our victory.
Joining me now, Democratic strategist Chris Kafinas. Chris, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
But Ronald Reagan didn't claim anything of the kind. I mean, after the barracks were bombed in Beirut, he pledged to bring those responsible to justice and to keep U.S. troops in Lebanon and to keep U.S. policy intact. And 3 months later, he pulled them all out. I mean, I don't mind a liar as much as I mind a stupid, uninformed, Cliff's Notes version gratuitous liar, and that's what Sarah Palin is.
Yeah, I think you're actually being generous in the terms of saying that she reads Cliff Notes. Here's the problem I have. Here is a person who is potentially running for president, was clearly a vice presidential candidate, and seems absolutely cavalier and indifferent about the facts. And I mean, it really kind of I think puts the Katie Couric interview in a little bit perspective when she was asked, "What do you read?" I mean, clearly she doesn't read very much in terms of either history or policy or whatever it might be, and that would be okay if she's just a personality who wants to sell books. But this is someone who appears to be running for president again, and when you are that cavalier with the truth, it's just downright dangerous.
Placemats. She reads placemats. The poll numbers. This CBS News poll, 66% of Americans do not want her to run for president. Do not want you to run for president. These are, Dick Cheney-like numbers. Is there a prospect of a book tour and thus a TV tour, mostly in friendly venues, really capable of changing any of that one way or the other?
Well, maybe she's striving for 100% not to vote for her. But putting it aside, I mean, listen, we're going through, Palin-palooza because she clearly has, in my opinion, political ambitions. And here's, I think, when you kind of step back and look at this objectively, you ask yourself, is there any way, she's the nominee, could she win, the presidency? And the reality is it would have to be some kind of biblical plague bad effect that would have to, affect the country in order for her to have a pathway to the presidency. But when you talk about the Republican nomination, that's where it becomes a little bit easier for her to win, because you only need, in a multi-candidate field, maybe 25–30% of the Republican vote, and because it's winner-take-all in these primary states, she could win the primary. She could win the nomination. That's what I think this book tour and this PR strategy is all about.
She told Limbaugh that the key for the Republicans to attract independents, which she's apparently not doing, is to not hesitate duking it out within the party. Is this perhaps the ultimate impact of this? The more Sarah Palin there is, the more New York 23rds there are, the more electable Republicans are thrown under the bus in favor of non-electable conservatives?
Listen, if Sarah Palin and Rush Limbaugh really believe that strategy, more power to them. I want them to execute this all over the country every single day through the midterms. It is a recipe for electoral disaster. You can't win unless you appeal to independents. And when independents look at the Republican Party and not only see a party that has moved fundamentally to the far right, but a Republican Party that is in the midst of a civil war where it's eating its own, that is not a recipe for electoral success. And so it just shows you again, not only I think Rush Limbaugh's lack of understanding of politics, but it shows you, I think, the real kind of strategy that Sarah Palin is following here. This has nothing to do, if you look in terms of, if you're talking about presidential politics, this has nothing to do about larger ambitions other than trying to figure out a pathway to appeal to conservatives in order to have a shot to win the Republican nomination.
Lastly, why did she drag Tina Fey back into this? Does she not know that all the finger pointing will necessarily turn up in at least one sketch this year on Saturday Night Live? I mean, they have to do it.
I'm going to give a piece of advice to every politician: don't attack comedians, because comedians can have the last laugh. The reality is what she was doing was sarcasm. Of course, comedians are going to stretch the truth. But here's the irony: she wasn't really stretching the truth.
Yeah.
When it comes to Sarah Palin, the funny thing is, truth is funny, and that's what's sad about, I think, you know, her whole rollout, her whole performance. I think what we're witnessing in Sarah Palin is the People magazining of American politics. Let's hope it doesn't go any farther than Sarah.
Yeah, when you see it, you're supposed to react to it, not to pat myself too strongly on the back. You're supposed to do what I did when Ben Affleck did his impression of me, not every moment of which I enjoyed, which was 8.5 minutes of publicity on Saturday Night Live. Anyway, Democratic strategist Chris Kofinas with us from Washington, as always. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Keith.